One pitch. That is all it took. One pitch in one inning of one game, and by the time the night was over, a pitcher had been demoted to the minors, a pitching coach had publicly turned on his own manager, and the Dodgers locker room had fractured in a way that nobody inside that organization was prepared for. Baseball has a saying. It takes a team to win and one man to lose. But what happened after this particular loss went far beyond one man making one mistake. What unfolded in the hours after that final out was a chain reaction, a series of decisions and confrontations and accusations that revealed something uncomfortable about the team the Los Angeles Dodgers have become behind closed doors. Blake Treinen threw the pitch that ended the inning. But Treinen did not just cost his team a game. According to what emerged in the chaotic hours that followed, he cost Shohei Ohtani something Ohtani had been quietly chasing all season, his 7th home run of the year, stripped away in circumstances that still have people inside that clubhouse furious. The GM acted before the stadium lights were even turned off. Pitching coach Mark Prior stood in front of reporters and said words about Dave Roberts that a coach almost never says about his own manager. Words that cannot be walked back. Words that landed like a grenade in a room that was already on fire. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, Treinen turned toward Yoshinobu Yamamoto, his own teammate, a man who had given everything on the mound that night, and said things that crossed a line that most professional athletes understand instinctively never to cross. This is not a story about one bad pitch. This is a story about what happens when pressure finally breaks a clubhouse open, and everything that was hidden inside spills out onto the floor for the entire world to see. Let's go inside it. To understand the explosion, you first have to understand what was compressed. Yoshinobu Yamamoto had been extraordinary that night. From the first inning, he was operating at the level that made the Dodgers willing to invest in him so heavily, precise, composed, devastating with his secondary pitches, and completely in control of the game's tempo. Inning after inning, Yamamoto did what great pitchers do when they are locked in, he made it look easy. The Dodgers, offensively, were building something. The lineup was working deep into counts, manufacturing base runners, and creating the kind of sustained pressure that forces opposing pitchers to make mistakes. And in the at-bat that would become the most talked-about moment of the entire night, Shohei Ohtani stepped in with runners on base and the game hanging in the balance. What happened next is the kind of thing that Dodger Stadium faithful will be describing for years. Ohtani read the pitch perfectly. His timing, which on its best nights looks less like athletic skill and more like some form of extrasensory perception, was exact. His swing path was textbook. And the ball left his bat on a trajectory that every person inside that stadium recognized immediately. Gone. Except it wasn't. Because of circumstances surrounding the play, a situation that has been described by those close to the game as deeply frustrating and entirely preventable, the home run did not officially count in the way that Ohtani and the Dodgers had expected. The details are layered and complicated, involving a sequence of events on the field that created a ruling that wiped away what should have been Ohtani's 7th home run of the season. The stadium went from eruption to confusion to silence in the span of about 90 seconds. And in the Dodgers dugout, the reaction was not confusion. It was something colder and more specific than that. It was fury. Blake Treinen entered the game in the late innings. The Dodgers needed outs. The bullpen had been taxed. And Treinen, a veteran reliever with enough experience to handle high-leverage situations, was trusted with the moment. He did not handle it. What Treinen delivered in that critical stretch was not simply ineffective pitching. It was the kind of performance that unravels everything that came before it, the kind that makes 6 innings of brilliant starting pitching completely irrelevant, that converts a game the Dodgers controlled into a loss they cannot explain, and that leaves every player in the dugout staring at the wall in the silence that only a certain kind of defeat produces. The runs scored. The lead evaporated. The game slipped away. And the GM did not wait until morning. In an act that sent an immediate and unmistakable message to every person in that organization, the front office made the call to option Treinen to the minors before the night was over. Not the next day. Not after a meeting, after a review, after a measured organizational discussion. That night, with the stadium still half full and the locker room still processing what had just happened, the speed of the decision was itself a statement. It said, what happened tonight was not acceptable. It said, we watched Yoshinobu Yamamoto give us everything he had, and we watched that effort be wasted, and we are not going to sit quietly while that happens. It said, loudest of all, that nobody's roster spot is protected when the standard is this badly violated. Word reached the locker room fast. It always does. And the reaction among the players was immediate and divided, some understanding the decision, some stunned by its speed, all of them suddenly aware that the atmosphere inside that clubhouse had shifted into something genuinely volatile. Mark Prior has been in professional baseball long enough to understand the rules. Not the rulebook rules. The other ones. The unspoken professional agreements that govern how coaches speak publicly about the people they work alongside, specifically, how a pitching coach is supposed to speak about his manager. You do not criticize your manager in front of reporters. You do not undermine the decision-making of the person who sits in the dugout making the calls. You find private channels, private conversations, private moments to express whatever disagreement you carry. That is the code. And it has been the code for as long as the sport has existed. Prior broke it. Standing in front of reporters in the aftermath of the loss, Prior did not offer the standard language of accountability and moving forward. He did not speak in the careful, measured terms that coaches use when they are managing their words as deliberately as their pitchers manage their pitch counts. He said, with a directness that left everyone in the room momentarily speechless, that the management decisions made during that game had undermined everything his pitching staff had worked to build. That the way Yamamoto had been handled, specifically the timing of when he was pulled and who was brought in after him, reflected a failure of in-game decision-making that he could not defend. Everything was ruined, he said. 3 words. 8 syllables. And the kind of public declaration from a coach about his manager that immediately becomes the only thing anyone can talk about. Roberts, for his part, received the news of Prior's comments in the way that experienced managers receive bad news, with a stillness that does not reveal what is happening underneath. His public response was restrained. Professional. The response of a man who understands that reacting emotionally to a provocation in front of cameras is exactly what the situation does not need. But behind closed doors, the damage was real. Prior had not just expressed frustration, he had created a fracture in the coaching staff that would take significant time and significant organizational energy to repair. And in a pennant race, with October creeping closer on the calendar, that fracture carries a cost that goes beyond the personal. Of everything that happened in the hours after this loss, the reported confrontation between Blake Treinen and Yoshinobu Yamamoto is the most difficult to understand, and the most revealing. Yamamoto had given the Dodgers everything. He had competed with the precision and intensity that defines his best performances. He had held together through tough stretches, made his pitches when they mattered most, and handed the game to his bullpen in a position where the Dodgers had every reason to believe they would win. What Treinen allegedly directed at Yamamoto in the locker room afterward, the specific words, the tone, the target, represents a violation of something that goes deeper than team rules or organizational standards. It represents a violation of the basic respect that teammates owe each other, and particularly the respect that a veteran player owes a younger teammate who has done his job completely and well. The details of exactly what was said remain partially protected by the closed-door nature of the locker room. But multiple sources describe an exchange that was sharp, personal, and deeply inappropriate, the kind of words that land differently when they are directed at someone who came to this country to compete at the highest level and who has carried himself with nothing but professionalism since the moment he arrived. The Dodgers roster heard it. Coaches heard it. And the organization, which had already made one decisive move that night, now had to consider whether additional action was necessary. The answer, according to those close to the situation, was unambiguous. The demotion already in process was not just about the pitching performance. It was about everything that followed it. Here is what one night in Los Angeles produced. A home run that was taken away. A veteran reliever sent to the minors before the stadium lights went dark. A pitching coach who broke the unspoken code and told the truth about his manager on the record. And a locker room confrontation that left teammates looking at each other differently than they had 12 hours before. The Dodgers are a franchise built for winning. Built for October. Built around the understanding that everything, every roster decision, every pitching change, every difficult conversation, exists in service of that one ultimate goal. But winning requires more than talent. It requires trust. And trust, once broken inside a clubhouse, broken between a pitcher and a teammate, between a coach and a manager, between a front office and the players it is supposed to protect, does not repair itself simply because the next game begins. Yoshinobu Yamamoto will take the mound again. He will prepare the way he always prepares, with the meticulous dedication that has defined his entire professional career. He will not carry what happened into his next start. That is not who he is. Shohei Ohtani will step back into the batter's box. He will chase that 7th home run with the same quiet hunger he brings to every at-bat. He does not need the record to be corrected, he needs the team around him to be the team he signed up to be part of. The GM made a move. Pryor made a statement. Treinen crossed a line. And now everyone inside that organization, from the dugout to the front office to the clubhouse itself, has to decide what kind of team the Dodgers are going to be when things get hard.